Every once in a while, a random piece of media or news article will crop up, spurring internet culture to claim that this time the zombie apocalypse was happening. Who could forget the Miami cannibal attack where in 2012, a Florida resident high on bath salts literally ate the face of another man? Or during the Ebola scare of 2014, where an Ebola victim apparently returned to life while in a body bag? Stories ranging from complete insanity in individuals to just news outlets using sensationalism and clickbait to flat out lie. However, if you haven't heard the latest in zombie origin conspiracies, this next one may scare either the hunters across America or Bambi fans alike. We are doing things a bit different for this video. I usually cover video game doomsday scenarios, but what if we take a look at what's going on in the real world and take a hypothetical what if with the currently popular subject of CWD, chronic wasting disease, much like the cordyceps brain infection we discussed with The Last of Us. You may see headlines cropping up everywhere or snapshots of that one scene in Train to Busan of a potential zombie deer outbreak coming out in the near future. CWD stems from what are called prion disease, which are more scientifically referred to as a transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, or TSEs for short. Prion diseases are neurodegenerative.
When these cellular prion proteins misfold, the structure changes to become far more resistant to unfolding and breaking down. These misfolded prion proteins are referred to as PRPTSE, which aggregate into fibrils and plaques, eventually accumulating in the brain, damaging brain tissue up until a point where it can ultimately cause death.
Causing degeneration, literal holes described as spongifying in the gray matter, and the body being incapable of producing inflammatory responses. However, at this time, not much is known of these prion-altered proteins that are affected within the brain, except that they destroy nervous system tissue. Basically meaning the whole body, without medical aid, cannot fight back or show symptoms early, while the host slowly denigrates mentally, displaying random bouts of hysteria, wasting away, and numerous other, well, scary symptoms that will inevitably lead to the victim's death, all while we have considerably less knowledge on the general disease and protein at hand. The most well-known variant of these diseases would be the mad cow craze, otherwise known as BSE, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, which is most likely originated from farmers and factories feeding cattle, basically processed cannibalism using ground-up livestock as a protein source for other livestock. The virus can lay dormant within the cattle anywhere from 2 to 8 years before becoming fully apparent, acting like an animal similarly affected by rabies. However, rabies is popularly known to affect the victim outright within a few days and make them aggressive. Much like rabies, however, attacking the nervous system, cows and livestock could experience coordination problems like frequently walking backwards awkwardly, abnormal posture, twitching, extreme weight loss, and reduced milk production, violent mood swings, and moaning as a significator of internal pain. Besides these symptoms, there are currently no live tests that can confirm or deny the disease within livestock, and vaccines do not exist for it either, meaning death is the ultimate outcome. BSE, of course, does not directly infect humans on its own, and once a piece of nervous meat or tissue that is mechanically recovered into more of a paste like those used to make burgers, sausages, and meat pies is consumed by a human, they will most likely develop VCJD, a variant of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Although similar to regular CJD, which can occur with no apparent cause and effects, only affecting 1 to 2 in a million people the world over, most prominently in people above the age of 50, VCJD can occur within anyone 20 years or older and can attack a host much quicker than onset CJD. While it's not 100% confirmed that BSE in cows can become VCJD in humans, tests done on macaque monkeys, a species of monkey with DNA most similar to humans, can confirm that those monkeys exposed to direct strain injections of BSE eventually developed VCJD. I know it's a lot of words to throw out there, as it was prevalent in the mid-90s where an outbreak resulted in the deaths of 150 British people. But after federal regulations and numerous feed bans that were implemented in the United Kingdom and United States, cases of BSE in cattle have gone from nearly 15,000 in 1995 to a mere 2 in 2015. Now, why did I discuss these diseases in such detail? Well, because of their relevance in the category of the TSEs. CWD, chronic wasting disease, in its current form only latches on to reindeer, elk, moose, and of course deer in an extremely similar manner to the mad cow disease. The origins of the virus are wrapped in mystery country, with reports of the disease coming in from the United States, Canada, Norway, and South Korea. Now, we may have an origin disease for Train to Busan after all. The CWD variant of prions is highly infectious compared to the mad cow BSE variant, in it that it can be transferred through blood, urine, feces, and saliva. However, chronic wasting disease can also transfer and be dispersed into local soil, water, or food, and it can lie dormant in any of the fawn, deer, moose, or elk, which can allow their bodily fluids to enter these sources. The disease can lie dormant for even years, allowing other animals to contract the virus over long periods of time, creating higher numbers and infection rates among the deer population. As the CDC describes, animals affected by the disease will display symptoms years down the road after being affected. Symptoms including drastic weight loss, stumbling, lack of coordination, listlessness, drooling, excessive thirst or urination, drooping ears, lack of fear of people, and aggression. The most prominent of these symptoms for zombie fanatics being aggression, but for zombie enthusiasts out there beckoning for a non-fictional zombie apocalypse, hold your horses. The CDC has stated that chronic wasting disease has not been shown in any case to affect humans, but strongly recommends still to not consume possibly infected venison, as viruses always have the capability to mutate and develop drastically given unforeseen circumstances. Much like we discussed in my Why You Wouldn't Survive The Last of Us video, a natural deviation could occur to where a targeted host may be shifted completely to another entirely. The Cordyceps fungus taking control of the most controlling insect species in its forest population and within the Last of Us universe, transferring to human hosts possibly through food consumption and starting a fungus-related pandemic. And as discussed earlier, the form of mad cow disease was able to take on a new form within a human host with the VCJD strain of protein. So what if this chronic wasting disease were to leap the species gap and infect humans if they were exposed? A likely scenario involving a patient zero would be a game hunter that shot and killed an infected deer, elk, or moose. Some hunters will see to processing their meat and following hunting and CDC guidelines to avoid any tainted meat in labeled areas. However, not everyone follows rules and regulations, and we could see a hunter hunting a suspected deer and using any of its meat to consume, becoming infected without knowing, specifically any meat that surrounds the nervous system. Since it does take years to show any signs and/or symptoms, it's possible during this dormancy period that anyone the hunter engaged with sexually, swapped saliva with, donated blood to, or even drunkenly pissed or vomited in inappropriate areas could dormantly spread the virus throughout a progressively widening Homo sapien population for years. However, consuming the deer wouldn't be the only way of it beginning. As stated earlier, local soil and water could also be tainted by an infected deer just getting a drink, drinking from rivers, urinating or defecating in the forest, and with the deer possibly reeling from the effects of the disease, could wander into a small town since the disease removes any fears of people and spreads the disease in any number of ways, leaving behind its bodily fluids to spread in the countries of Canada, Norway, Korea, and the United States. Now, within the US, most prominently in the states of Wyoming, Colorado, Wisconsin, Kansas, and Nebraska, with a few more isolated cases cropping up in Texas, New Mexico, Arkansas, and those shown here illustrated by the map. We could also see an introduction of a CWD outbreak reminiscent of 28 days later. In case studies conducted by the CDC, the CWD prion has been shown to experimentally infect squirrel monkeys and also laboratory mice that carry some human genes. In addition, a study begun in 2009 by Canadian and German scientists is evaluating whether CWD can be transmitted to macaques that has been shown to be infected with CWD previously. With continued studies of this nature, we could see a bridged connection. As we know in the 28 Days Later universe, experimentation upon monkeys in a controlled environment leading to genetic rearrangement is what caused and created the rage virus and its subsequent outbreak. However, it would be much less likely for this scenario to occur since the primates of this series were immediately and completely enraged, quick to attack, and their means and time of infection are much more drastic. Infected deer are shown to be aggressive, but are mostly shambling, twitchy, and honestly pathetic husks of their former selves. Chronic wasting disease would have to mutate to cause the host to to be even more aggressive and attack others, while also getting rid of half of its symptoms so the host could retain their normal motor skills. That way they aren't shambling around, shaking, and could actually attack others. The means of infection, however, are exactly similar to 28 Days Later, transferring through blood, bites, romantic final kisses, and while not really explored, water supplies and food that has grown through tainted soil. If the disease were to pull a Last of Us, but remain dormant in thousands of people, possibly across the world, the symptoms would mandate a health crisis. Like a game of Pandemic 2, symptoms would have to remain less noticeable before executing the zombie outbreak. As it stands, deers are very noticeable once the symptoms are cropping up. The virus suppressing aberrant symptoms and eventually turning the host into a rabies-like frenzy, biting, scratching, vomiting, and more upon others would be the way it would spread like wildfire. However, considering as of now there are no cures for any of the related prion diseases, it's scary to see if we would be able to counteract and hopefully make a cure against this brain protein folder. And no, not this kind of folder, I mean literally folding these proteins. But it would most likely be caught early, as too many symptoms would arise, as the time for full effects to take on would be easy to screen for once it has been noticed, whereby the government, CDC, and other enforcement agencies would see to quarantining the infected, any towns suspected of harboring the virus in their soil, water, and most importantly population, and either killing the people, burning their bodies, filtering the water, burning the land, and other extreme measures. It's not likely that the CWD would be able to advance into a zombie outbreak in any way, shape, or form, just most likely would render you a weakening body with no hope, hysteria, and a craving for crap.
From hell! It's from hell!
As the deers that we are seeing tend to eat their own feces and drink their own piss and do not eat any other sources of food. So eventually the person would die due to malnourishment as well. But that's of course the fictional worst case scenario based on inspirations of zombie-based media like 28 Days Later and The Last of Us. And hopefully you didn't see this as a OMG it's a zombie apocalypse fad. But it is interesting to discuss how these things could occur, and maybe things would end up like the people in Train to Busan after everything that happened preceding that demon deer.